Welcome everybody to Dead Talk Live, and tonight we have a very special guest, Brett Donahue from the hit movie Slaxx. Brett, how you doing?
I'm doing really good.
And
Really
Brett,
good. How you
I
doing?
I watched Slaxx again this weekend. Have you
Uh,
ever figured out what B2B means? B2B. B that is
yeah.
just stuck in my head.
It's a mantra. It's a life guideline, you could
Yeah,
say.
for
Yeah.
CCC, that is just hysterical. I mean, I love the satire in Slacks. It
Mhm.
just took it to a whole new level. Are you surprised following the release of Slacks, the following that this movie is amassing with each passing day?
Yeah, you know what? It's I mean, it's nothing but a wonderful thing. The fact that we do this small movie up in Canada, and I mean, to give you a little, background on the Canadian independent film system, it's hard as hell to get films into theaters because all the theaters, spanned out across the country, they're just bringing in all the big Hollywood names.
Yeah.
So to get a Canadian independent film seen in the first place is one thing, but then for it to translate and find a platform on Shutter and have all these people be able to kind of get a chance to see it. It's been nothing but wonderful. Yeah,
Would you say your life has changed as this movie
my life has
continues?
changed. I People are giving me clothes, food, houses.
I
It's
mean,
nuts.
Craig is a very intriguing character.
Yeah.
You could definitely say he has ambition, if nothing
hmm
else.
hmm
Now, you have been in this business for a while. When things are said and done with Slacks, which I don't think it's ever going to happen. It's going to continue to grow and grow and grow. Are you going to look
hmm
back and say that Slacks was your breakout role?
Oh God. I guess it depends on what comes next. If nothing comes next, then I guess not. No, you know what? It's funny because it whatever happens, I'll say that it was such a real gift for me to play because someone in my casting and when you're going out for a lot of TV and regular films, I'll say it's like there's always kind of a cool realism that's wanted from the producers, from the tone of the show, all of that. So to have this script land on your desk with this bizarre concept. I mean, when I first read the email with the synopsis, I was like, this is one of the things, two things. Either it's going to be really cool or batshit fucking crazy and awful. And it was kind of batshit crazy and great. So for me, like going back to what I said about like the typical characters that I'm usually approached with, this was a real breath of fresh air. Where I could actually approach a character and approach a style that was a bit elevated, and not just your typical kind of like suave realism.
As a horror fan, I would say horror comedy is one of the hardest things to pull off
hmm
as a
hmm
filmmaker. You're either
Yeah,
going to nail it or you're going to really screw it up. And with Slacks, they nailed it.
yeah.
What do you attribute its success to?
Well, I think the concept was one that was already kind of, well, it was already a bit out there, right? And
Hmm.
so I think if you're already asking people to come to a film with this premise, like you're expecting them to come with a certain, I don't know, well, enthusiasm, we'll say, right? No one's going into this going like too seriously, like, well, I
Yeah.
want to see a serious film about some real pants that are actually, it's not like that. So you already have to have kind of uh, uh, an openness in mind in terms of the film you're going to see. But I think the fact that it was rooted in this kind of bizarre concept, but also we have hints and little whispers of speaking to actual conflicts within fast fashion, within the environmental issues and ethical issues that surround the film. So it had kind of a foundation there, and then also I have to say, I mean, the thing that kind of hooked me off the bat was the fact that we were going to do everything with practical effects. When they
Mm.
told me that things were being like all the pants, everything is going to be done through practical effects, I was like, okay, I'm in. Like, say no more. because that speaks to me. Like one of my favorites is John Carpenter's The Thing.
Hmm.
And what stands out and what makes that film so amazing, even to this day, and it's still, it's still legit to this day, is these amazing practical effects where you don't see the CGI dated in a certain way. You know what I mean?
It was a movie when it came out in the 80s, was ahead of its time, and still
Mm-hmm.
today it just never gets old. Like
No.
you just mentioned, there is a lot of social commentary in Slaxx.
Mm-hmm.
Child labor,
Mm-hmm.
basically all the BS that the company CCC is putting out there,
Mm-hmm.
bringing you tomorrow, today, no sweatshops, no
Yeah.
child labor. We find out it's all BS,
Mm-hmm.
and they're doing what everyone else is doing. And do you like the social commentary, it touching on real life issues and
Oh,
blending it
absolutely.
into a horror satire film?
Absolutely. I mean, it's the best. It's almost the best way to kind of talk about some of these issues, because if it was just a straight up documentary about the ethical horrors of fashion, then I mean, it would achieve a certain goal, it would reach certain people that wanted to really sit through a serious topic. But I think one of the best ways to actually put the lens on something is to do it in a satirical manner, or to do it in a way that has a little comedy in it, so people are kind of, their guard is lowered a little bit, and they can kind of see the issue while enjoying themselves in a movie. So it becomes an experience about many things. It's the enjoyment of the movie, and also this thing kind of lands and makes them think twice, or makes them think a little deeper about the issues at hand. And I don't know, it just kind of allows
Yeah.
that question to kind of penetrate further than I think it would if it was just, well, a straight up documentary.
Exactly. And just moving forward to the end of the film, it surprised me.
Mm.
Watching the whole film, I expected Libby, who, was played by, I got her name right here, Romaine Dennis, who did a brilliant job at playing
Mm-hmm.
Libby.
Mm-hmm.
The way the movie ended, it was not a happy ending.
No.
Like you would kind of expect, maybe from a satire horror film. The ending was very, oh my God, what's going to happen now? Everyone is dead. We see a massacre ensue inside the store.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it because it totally threw me off from what I was expecting. Did you like how the film ended?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, for me, I love films that don't quite resolve,
Mm-hmm.
or that leave us a little bit, I'll say, unsatisfied in a way, but not like dissatisfied. Of
Exactly.
course, we kind of we're always kind of geared towards the protagonist of the film, coming out on top and resolving the issue. But, it just speaks to that this issue, regardless of what happens in the store, it's being replicated by company after company after company after company. So there's no like finite moment where it can
Yeah.
kind of come to a closure. So what we need is just more pants on the rampage, and and more death, I suppose.
So let's go back to the start of this project. How did this role come your way? How did the audition process work out?
Yeah, it was really I think it was in late January or something like that. And that's usually the time where, the old the old forms of the pilot season, which doesn't really exist anymore, but that's normally the time when things kick up, and all of the network TVs and a lot of things is they're looking for what they're going to do for the next year. So it's usually a busy time, and then this just came through my agency, with a bit of a raised eyebrow. I'll say they were kind of like, "What do you think of this?" And as I said, like reading the synopsis, it was one of two things. It was like, "This is going to be amazing," or "This is going to be a real piece of shit." Like it's going to be
Yeah,
real.
yeah.
But you know what? I started reading it, and I was like, "Okay, that's funny. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I see where they're going. That. Oh, that's surprising." And it was just, it kind of kept developing in a way that was surprising to me. And usually when you get something like this, you get a few pages in and you get a sense of what it's going to be and where it's going to go. But this was so off the wall. Like I had really no idea how it was going to end,
Hmm.
to your point before, or what they were trying to do with it, until I kind of had a bigger picture of it all. So it was real, and it was just so different that it was really, really refreshing in that sense.
And was it a single audition? Was it a tape? Did you have to come
Yeah.
back for a
No,
callback?
so yeah, so we it was a tape originally. I got a friend of mine. We did it in my house, and we just kind of like, again, one of the beauties of it is that it really kind of it allowed a real freedom. Like what I was saying before about it being kind of a heightened material or a heightened situation. You know, it's not just going for the straight up realism.
Hmm.
It allowed me to kind of go like, well, shit, I'm gonna just go for something here. So I think I went like what you saw in the movie was probably a little bit less than what I did in the audition. Like I really like went out there for a version of Craig that we kind of honed in, but
That's
it
hard to
got there.
imagine.
Yeah, I know, I know. I can't remember what I did. I think I like started with him just doing a big line of Coke or something like that, and it was that's where the B2B kind of came from, which kind of makes sense. But we went a different way, obviously. Anyway, so yeah, I sent this thing off, and I was like, well, we'll see what happens. And then Elsa, the director and writer, and Patricia, the co-writer and the producer, they saw it and they called me in, and we had a big conversation about it. We kind of did a few scenes again. And then I was like, they were like, well, we want to do this. And I was like, well, I want to do this. So
That's
let's make it
great.
happen.
Now, when you got the role, and you said your audition, you took Craig to a way wacky level than what we actually saw on the screen. Was it a conversation between you and the director on how you guys wanted Craig to be portrayed in this movie? Was it
Yeah.
collaboration?
Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely. From day one. Elsa was great in that matter. Because it was her first feature with a real full cast of professional actors. So she was quite open in terms of that being a new experience for her. So nothing was taken for granted. Like we had conversations at length about kind of the progression, and it was tricky for Craig because we had to kind of see him go from this anal go-getter trying to climb the corporate ladder to someone that eventually is going to murder someone to wherever else he goes. It's quite a journey so it was important for me and for her to kind of mark these steps so it's plausible. Say like, okay,
Yeah,
so how does he get here exactly, and then how does he get from there to there? Because we have to make it. It can't just be, if it's too ridiculous, then it's too ridiculous and no one buys it, and then no one's really interested, and then I'm not really interested. You know what I
exactly.
mean?
Yeah. Now, if you were to describe Craig and what got you in the mindset to portray him, do you see him as this overly ambitious store manager? Do you see him somebody that might be a few apples short of a fruit basket? Is he has just been in this for too long that
Yeah,
he's just completely lost his way?
yeah. You know what though? I was trying like from the get go. I really tried to find. I was really sympathetic with Craig, or I had to find a certain sympathy for Craig, and really I mean, kind of a way in for things for me anyway is psychological. Like I kind of have to find what is driving this and why someone is going to do the things they're going to do. So by the end of it, like I loved him. I loved playing and I loved finding these reasons why he goes to this next step. And I think ultimately, like he's just like in his mind an undervalued person, and he doesn't have these kind of personal connections that really give him any fulfillment or really give him any reason to be. So it all kind of channels towards this work environment and
Yeah.
this placement with Harold Lansgrove. And
Yeah. Now, Craig, throughout the majority of the movie, is you don't hate him, you kind of sympathize with him.
Mhm,
That all turns when Shruti and Libby are talking to Karat, the
mhm,
possessed genes, out in the
mhm,
hallway, and you
mhm.
come out with the fire extinguisher. It
Yeah.
is at that moment that you become the bad guy. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, because for me, that's the moment where he's really hedging his bets and going, okay, so what is he going to do to kind of, what is he doing to be a good person in terms of his state and these two women that he's with, and what is he going to do to ultimately protect the company?
Yeah.
And ultimately, Craig goes the way of, spoiler alert, he goes the way of protecting the company.
And he goes the way of, Jack Nicholson in The Shining,
Yeah,
chasing his
exactly.
family. You
Which
are,
was like, I mean, I don't want to cut you off, but it was like, for me, uh, just a ball to play. I
uh-huh.
mean, I mean, it's always fun to play the bad guy, and it's always fun to play, again, to align the psychology towards what makes someone go to that extent. And I
Exactly.
find that really interesting.
And, this movie is a satire, like we discussed earlier. Everything is taken to an extreme level to the social media personality and how
Mm,
that's portrayed, to the store, to where you and Libby discover the first body in the bathroom. You're
yeah,
like, it's okay, you know.
I know.
What are the cops gonna do? A murderer,
Yeah,
unless you want to, trying to play it off as suicide. And Libby is looking at you and like, what is wrong with this guy? And then the
yeah,
second body pops up, and Libby's like, okay, that's enough. And then you're like, you know what? That's right. I'll go to Randy. And then you bonk her over the head,
yeah.
knock her out. As you're reading this script, and you're actually playing out these roles on the screen, uh, is there any, what's the right word, like past movies, TV shows like SNL skits that you try to draw inspiration
Oh, that's
from?
interesting. That's a good question. That's a really good question. God,
Because SNL is like the king of satire, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Shows similar to that. Or did you just not even think about that and just go within yourself and do it your way?
Oh, wow, that's a really good question. I think I mean, for sure, there's a bit of Michael Scott in there. There has to be
Yeah.
that kind of presence. That that it's the presence that's trying to. They're obviously the boss, and they want to be the boss and be respected as a boss, but they're also trying to be chummy and be part of the gang. Yeah, for sure, for sure, for
It's a hard
sure.
question. I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, it's been a while too, so there it might have been a little bit more present in my mind closer to the shoot, but right now I can't say specifically anyone like in mind that I was like really really basing it on. But
okay. Okay, that's fair enough. What do you find most intriguing about your character in Slacks?
uh, I think his desire to do good, because even when he's doing bad, it's it's in his mind that it's for the greater good,
Yeah.
though it's for the company. It's always this attempt to do what's best for the situation as he sees it, and which forces him to then, do these heinous things like knock Libby out with a leg of a mannequin, or to the ultimate extreme of
Becoming a
killing Trudy,
murderer.
his enemy. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So what was really fun, I think, and what was really interesting was playing someone constantly trying to like get a hold of the situation, maintain a grasp of the situation. That scene in the bathroom when I'm like, well, and I'm saying like, oh, she always had body issues, but I never thought it would come to this. It's my favorite scene of the film, like hands down.
Yeah, yeah, and it's the nonchalant way that you're like, oh, it's okay, and that's what
Yeah,
made it hysterical. And
yeah,
kudos to you for pulling that off so well.
yeah.
At
Thanks.
the end of the movie, in the credits, I love how they give us a glimpse into the practical effects of how they did the dancing
Hmm.
jeans.
Hmm.
Were you there to witness? I mean, obviously you were there with the hallway and the jeans on the mannequin, so you got to see the people with the green screen around them
Hmm.
and stuff. Were you there during the filming of the dancing scene of the dancing jeans with the
Oh
person?
yeah.
What'd you
Oh,
think
but
of that? That was
oh,
ingenious.
no, no, no. That's again like when I say like what hooked me for this film was the fact that they were doing the jeans as practical effects. Like that was it. Everything that they did, and it's done so well that there's points where I go, ooh, even watching the film, I'm like, oh, was that a practical effect or was that complete CGI? But no, it was all puppeteers
I was
wearing green
surprised.
screen. Yeah, all they were always wearing little green Zorb suit kind of things, if you know what that is.
Hmm.
And then they would polish up the background with some CGI, but all the movement of the jeans was all all through practical effects. So it was either one or two or three people at times manipulating these genes as they're flying through the air. One of the craziest thing, when we kill the Instagram star, the influencer,
Yeah.
and the genes kind of come up from behind and then twist around her neck and wrap up tight.
Mm-hmm.
They did that live. Like they had the two legs on a stick so they could spin it so it would spool up really quick and tighten around her neck. Like, it was really, really, really impressive.
Wow.
Yeah, we did stunt rehearsals with the puppeteers and how they were going to manipulate the genes. For instance, for my death, when the genes kind of drop kick me, we had a day of rehearsals for that, and then trying to figure out the timing of, because they had to have two guys lift the woman who was controlling the genes. So she had to kind of run with the genes, and then these two guys lifted her so she could then lift up the genes and kind of fly through the air. It was just, it was wild.
That must have been wild.
They did an amazing job
to watch. And it just goes to show you, with some ingenuity and creativity, anything is possible. Now, when I went and watched this film for the first time, I was under the impression that these genes were going to be like demonically possessed. Which I'm like, okay, instead of a person, this is a comedy. They're taking a twist. I like the fact that they made it a real person. And that moment in the hallway when Libby, Shruti are interacting with the genes, who we come to know is Karat, a 13-year-old girl, I think is very powerful. Looking in hindsight, of course, you did not write this film. Do you think it played better keeping it a real person instead of making it a demon type entity that possessed these blue genes?
Yeah, I think, if I can speak as like for myself as an audience member, like
as a
with
fan.
Movies I watch, or as a fan, exactly. It's like, it's always deeper. Like, you would correspond deeper to something where you can actually see a plausible reason for it. You know what I mean? If it's just a monster on a rampage, then we kind of understand, oh, it's a monster on a rampage. And it could be scary, but it doesn't really go anywhere else. Like, it doesn't evolve to anything else than that. And if that's the case, then it's easy to lose interest. It's easy to go, oh, I understand it. What's next?
It falls into the cliches that we've seen 1,000 times before.
Exactly. And it just, it would have, I think if that had been the case for this film, it would have been a fun film and it would have been enjoyable. But I don't think it would have had as lasting of a presence, because it wouldn't have required you as the watcher to really think beyond it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So by placing the spirit of the pants in Kirat, this 13-year-old girl, we get, it just opens up the whole conversation about the real world scenario, about child labor, and about, I think one of my favorite lines was Shruti's when she goes, well, how do you think, they can make a pair of jeans for $10
for $5 and sell them for $150?
Exactly. Yeah, the fact that, which is, not necessarily untrue.
No.
When you think of like a product you can have, could be made across the world and then shipped to you, and you can buy it for $15. Like, how do the economics of that make any sense at all?
Exactly.
So I think, it just puts the film, it adds a complete different level to the film, and I think they're really smart to have done it.
I love how this film gives us fresh faces that we haven't seen a lot of, like Romain and Sahar, who played Shruti. How did you guys all get along on the set? Did you find like an instant chemistry? Were you guys really having a blast behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's funny, Sahar and I actually went to school together.
Really?
We went to a theater school in Montreal together. So there was already an instant, a well-established chemistry there. And I think everyone, I have no place for egos. I have no patience for them. That's just not how what I look to, or what I expect to see when working. And anytime someone arrives with something like that, even if they are someone that's quite established, it's like, come on. No. We're all here to do something, and if you're not here to do that, then just get lost.
Exactly.
So it was real easy, and I think when it's something like this, when it's what the film was, what it required, what it was about. It kind of takes everyone to go, okay, so on what level are we doing this? So it actually requires a real kind of collective effort, because everyone kind of has to get on the same page in terms of how we're playing this, like how we're playing it up, and how do we keep the tone consistent, and all of that. So I think it was really, and it was well managed by Elsa and Anne-Marie Jalinas, who's one of the producers who I'd worked with before on another film. Yeah, everyone was really great at being pretty open and being pretty
Awesome.
gung ho about being there.
Awesome. How long did shooting take from start to finish?
God, I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was 3 weeks. We did the whole thing in 3 weeks. It was 3 weeks in 3 locations.
Okay, that's pretty
Yeah.
good. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
You've been in a couple of other horror films.
Hmm.
What is it? What's the difference being in a comedy satire, horror film as opposed to an actual serious other type subgenre in the horror realm? Is there any
Yeah.
difference? Is it all the same? Is it more lighthearted? Do you have to go into a different frame of mind to pull off the comedy aspect along
Yeah. I
as
think
opposed to the
so.
scare?
No, I think so. I think horror is tough. It's tough because you really have to collectively create that tone, right, and maintain that tone.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if it falls short in one performance or somewhere, it can kind of like really be a chink in the armor for the whole thing. But I think what was important for us was really, because you don't want to lean too heavy into the satire or too heavy into the comedy. Otherwise, it gets just a bit too ridiculous. And we
Mm-hmm.
still want those like surprise moments. We still want those fright moments, even if they are colored a little bit with the ridiculousness. But yeah, I think it's just kind of it's putting the work in to really establish that tone
Yeah.
and to really establish how big do we go. Because as I said in my audition, where I went a little bigger with Craig, if you can believe. If we don't have the reins on that kind of thing, and everyone is just going to what they see fit, it'll just create inconsistency, and then we don't have a cohesive world.
Yeah.
And if we don't have that, then the audience doesn't have that, and then we've lost the film.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, Craig has a kick-ass demise in the film.
Yes.
He gets exactly what's coming to him with
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
army of genes, which I love, that line up in formation and they
Mhm.
surround you on all fronts, and you're done. You're done. Uh, how was it shooting that? And what'd you think of how Craig's demise went? I mean, did you like it as a fan? And what was it like shooting it?
I mean, would I have liked Craig to survive? Yeah, certainly. Do I think he got what he deserved? Yeah, certainly. Um, yeah, but I mean, how else do you want to go out other than being
Exactly.
just kind of flooded by this army of pants that gnaw you to the bone? What I really wanted, and we couldn't get it, was there's a lot of moments where I'm speaking on a comm system,
Yeah.
so I'm always like putting my finger to my ear, and I was really hoping that when they revealed to see my kind of bloodied and picked at skeleton, that comm was left right by the side of my skull, but it didn't happen in the end.
I mean, those jeans skinned you. That's an understatement.
Yeah.
You definitely went out. I've spoken to a lot of people who have suffered horror movie deaths, and one thing that they always ask the director is, if you're gonna kill me, make sure I get a worthy death. And I think
Yeah.
Craig definitely got a memorable death to remember him by. Another
I've had
aspect,
some good ones. I've had another one where I got in another film, I got my throat slit, and we had to do the whole. We had the whole like blood pipe coming up my chest
yeah.
and this prosthetic throat thing, and it was just like oozing blood. So I've had a couple good deaths, but like being gnawed to the bone by an army of pants, that probably, I don't know if I'll ever top that. Like,
No,
what can I do to top
I
that?
can't see that. And what I love about this movie that I think is absolutely hysterical, that you've never seen in any horror movie before, is these genes really know how to clean up after themselves. They don't even
Yeah.
leave a spot of
Yeah.
blood anywhere. I found that hysterical. Uh, I mean, that just made me crack up. Now, going back, how do you feel? Would you classify yourself as a horror fan? Do you like the genre? I'm not talking about acting, and then as a fan, do you like horror, or is it okay with you? What are your feelings on the overall horror genre?
Yeah, you know what? I'm not big into like the like gore type horror, blood and guts kind of thing, but like for a film to effectively, like, I have nothing but respect for a film that effectively scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, looks like, oh, there I am back. Am I back?
Oh yeah, we got you.
Oh, you got me? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like if I can kind of buy in and really be freaked out, like that is nothing but respect. So like thriller kind of horrors, like I'm that's right up my alley.
Me too. Me too. Blood, guts, and gore doesn't impress me. It's not scary to me. But something that is deep in character and storyline, that actually also scares you at the same time, that's what I
Hmm.
love. That's what I love as a horror
Hmm.
fan. Now, again, what going back to the ending and how it ended with Libby, do you think it was left intentionally that way for maybe the possibility of this franchise continuing? And well, actually
Ah,
turning into a franchise, I should say.
yeah. No, it's a good question. I think what they were trying to do was just put it out there in terms of like kind of what we discussed before. Like, there's no, there would be no real like appropriate closure point
Yeah.
because the problem is bigger than this one store or this one company, right? Um, but I mean, I would love to see more of Kirat taking her revenge
Yeah.
and going to different franchises and just the story expanding. I mean, I'd be happy with that.
And that's where the surprise for me came, where the ending surprised me, which is something really good. As a person who's watched a lot of movies, horror
Yeah.
movies in particular, you expect it to go, okay, Libby's going to talk Karat down. They're going to detach themselves from the genes. They got their justice. They got their
Right.
voices heard. But it went completely another way. And these genes now are looking for beyond justice. They're out
Yeah.
to avenge themselves. Um, how do you feel about that concept? I love it. It totally threw me off for a loop.
Yeah. I mean, it's nothing but fun for me. I mean, to imagine these genes continuing their rampage, like to going to other CCC stores and recruiting more of the super shapers. That's the thing. We were the flagship store in our region, we could say,
Yeah,
but plausibly, there's a lot more of these genes out there. There's a lot more of we'll say Kirat's blood infused with this genetically modified
yeah,
cotton, which was another thing that we haven't touched upon, which I think was brilliant in terms of the facade of this company being super ethical, super conscious, only using organic materials, not having any child labor. But then, it turns out they're using this
GMOs. Yeah,
yeah, this specific GMO, and her blood infuses with this GMO, which causes this kind of creature to be. I thought that was really, really, really smart, really fun.
really unique. Now let's go back
Yeah.
to you. Let's go to you. Your the start of your career. Your credits go back into like the mid 2000s. How
Hmm.
did you get started in acting? How at what age did you realize you wanted to be an actor? And how did it all come together for you?
Mm. Well, I wanted to play in the NBA. Like, I was a huge basketball fan. That was like my goal growing up, and didn't happen, obviously, for many reasons. But like I was really big into sports as a kid, and then when that was not looking like it was going to turn out, I joined an improv team, and then I went to university, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. But one of the courses that I took was this theater course, and it became the course where I put all of my interest in. And then that translated to going to from university to a conservatory in Montreal, where I had another 3-year program to kind of delve further into it. I don't know. It was when I was growing up, like I loved movies, I loved TV, I loved SNL, I loved characters, and I loved kind of the storytelling element. Yeah. My dad's a big storyteller, but it never seemed like something that I could do. Like it never seemed like a vocation, like a job that someone could do. It was like this thing that some people do in Hollywood, and that's just they got there somehow, and that's what they do.
Yeah.
For me, it was never like an avenue to pursue. Until I kind of got into it, and I found some success, and it became this thing where I was like, okay, this is really interesting to me, and I want to keep pursuing this. And after I went to this conservatory school, I kind of got out and started the business, and started getting little parts here and there, and doing a lot of theater. Like I always, the school I went to was a theater school, and it was always a big part of my development. And I still do theater every now and then. So it was always the early stages of my career was always dotted with some theater stuff, some small film and TV stuff, and then it kind of just the ball kept rolling, and opportunities came. And
now, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You said Canada is, we all know, is a huge filming spot. A lot of American studios, actors come up there. You are Canadian, right?
I am Canadian.
Yeah. So how do you feel? Because I've spoken to a lot of people that are Canadian, and they're being cast in roles filmed in Canada, which I think is very appropriate. What do you think has changed over the last 5 to 10 years, and what new opportunities have been created for Canadians in the motion picture industry?
Well, I think more and more you're seeing, like you say, because of it's cheaper to film in Canada, and you've got cities like Toronto and Vancouver and Montreal and Winnipeg that have big kind of big infrastructures to be able to handle a lot of filming.
Yeah.
It's proving that there's a lot of talent up here. There's a lot of talent in all fields, not just acting, but like in all realms. But the problem with Canada, and I'll be quite candid, is that we're always kind of there's a real little brother syndrome that happens north of the border. Because the industry is inundated with all of these American projects that take all the film crews and employ a lot of people, and it's great. It creates a real strong kind of consistent industry. But what it takes away from is a certain insistence for Canadians to create and write and direct and produce films here that are then going to be seen and distributed. Like I said before, it's like it's great to make a Canadian indie, but you're going to have a hell of a time getting that Canadian indie into theaters with any real seriousness.
Distribution is the problem.
Exactly. And we have major film festivals in TIFF, in the things that happen in Vancouver, in the Fantasia Festival in Montreal. So there's a lot of it's weird. There's a lot of presence, but in terms of the Canadian influence on that presence, it's not as strong, because it's really kind of the Canadian experience is kind of spread thin around all of these different projects that are coming from elsewhere. And again, as I say, it's important to have, but it kind of takes away from our ability to kind of create a strong industry of our own. Because so that's all on the creation part, and then B, it's hard kind of reining in an audience to come see these Canadian films when everyone has all the opportunity to see not only just all the big films from Hollywood, but all the stuff from the UK, all of the films from the English-speaking world that kind of come into the market. So we're constantly at battle with a lot of these much
the US, bigger, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you see that making a lot of Canadian talent actually come to Absolutely. Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta, which are big for just to get the recognition that they're not.
For sure.
Yeah,
I mean, look at some of our biggest directors.
yeah,
And of course, they've had successes here, but they haven't had the successes that they deem high enough until they go elsewhere. And there's a really kind of weird thing for actors that there's kind of like an undue clout that arrives when you go and live and start doing things in LA a little bit, even if you
yeah.
don't necessarily progress in terms of like the roles that you're getting. The fact that you're in LA, it kind of makes you look more attractive in terms of um,
It's
in terms of the
perception.
casting size on exactly in terms of the casting directors and what's happening in Canada. They say, "Ooh, this person's down in LA. Wow, they must be
Yeah,
really developing, or they're more important. So we'll take them over an actor in Toronto, even though
mhm.
they might have the same capability and same career." But it's also like, I mean, I don't want to like, I'm getting really into the minutia here,
No, no, no.
but
I think it's fascinating.
Quebec is also a different thing, because Quebec, of course, is a French-speaking province. And in order to kind of advocate for their culture and to protect their culture, their arts institutions, their film institutions, and I'm talking about like funding institutions, are much greater than what you see in the rest of the Canada because it's much more spread out. If you
Yeah,
think of like a funding body, which is the Canadian Council for the Arts, it has to take care of all of Canada. You have as important of a body in Quebec, but it's solely responsible for Quebec. I mean, and it's because of this why you see such a strong cinema scene coming out of Quebec, and why
hmm,
you see some of the most renowned directors that are now going and making moves in LA and
yeah.
elsewhere. They're French Canadians.
One of the biggest surprises that I have found since I've started doing this show now 16 months is how like the majority of Hollywood, that includes all of motion picture arts, entertainment,
Mhm.
90% of it is really perception and how
Oh,
important perception is.
oh, for
The
sure.
image you portray, that is something that uh, when I started this, I was just a regular fan, and now I know that perception is a big key. How do you, what address are you coming from? Like you said,
Yeah.
are you in LA? Uh, Everybody knows I live in Northern Virginia, but I'm originally from New York. If I'm connecting with somebody in the industry, I tell them
Hmm.
I'm from New York.
Of
Because
course.
if I say I'm living in the DC suburbs of Washington, DC, it's not going to have the same effect.
No, exactly.
Now, are you seeing anything being done to change that in Canada? Any efforts or anything?
Yeah. I mean, again, there's always an effort. There's always an effort to kind of put the spotlight more on Canadian productions. But as much as like arts councils and government institutions are like, hey, support Canadian stuff, the cinemas are privately owned. They're going to make the decisions that make them money. Until the money comes around behind it, it's going
Hmm.
to be hard. But then you have like companies like New Metric Media do who do things like Letterkenny, which is a huge, huge international success, but it's
Yeah.
filmed in this small town, and it's Canadian, it's purebred Canadian talent and storytelling and all of that, and doing quite well. So I think with online platforms like Netflix and
Hmm.
Crave and all of these things, it kind of gives um, it gives different outlets for Canadian talent and for Canadian creations to find an audience that's separate from the traditional kind of cinema practice
Yeah.
or the cinema system, which is quite closed.
Okay. Now, have
Yeah.
you ever considered like moving to LA or New York to further your career?
Yeah, yeah. I was in it, like I've been in LA a few times for premieres and things like that. Um, and it's kind of funny. It's like one of these. There's always seems to be. So Slaxx was actually a thing that interrupted one of my trips down to LA. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go this year, and then I got this film right off the bat. So I was like, okay, well, I'll stay in Canada and do this film. And then the other projects arrived, and then I had some theater commitments that I was already aligned with. And I mean, it's interesting now. It's not necessarily the same world,
No.
with what we can. I mean, look at us right now. The fact that we can do
Yeah.
this, the fact that casting sessions are like this, it's not necessarily as important to be in a specific city. other than like what I had mentioned before about
Yeah.
this undue clout that comes with it. But
And it's very evident. Hollywood has changed.
mhm,
COVID sped up a path that the industry was on. COVID sped that up
mhm,
tremendously. And
yeah,
you see all these studios, distribution companies trying everything and anything to see what the new model is going to be. What is going
yeah,
to be the wave of the future? What is going to work?
yeah,
Everything has changed. The book, from marketing down to public relations, everything has to be rewritten in this new world that we're living in. We're still in COVID. COVID is, again, back on the rise again. It's like a nightmare that won't end. And this industry in particular is trying to find the model that they're going to use moving forward. How do you
mm,
feel as an actor? Uh, you know, what do you think is going to end up happening? I predict that there's going to be a lot of mergers because of all the different streaming platforms, everything
yeah.
moving from theaters to home and streaming, and every major studio having their own streaming platform. I predict there's going to have to be some mergers because people are not going to sign up for 20 different streaming services to
No,
watch what they want to watch. How do you see that unfolding?
it's kind of weird. I mean, the positive aspect of it is that people, if you subscribe to said whatever, you have access to a lot of things, and a lot of different kinds of stories and a lot of storytelling from all over the planet.
Yeah.
But then you get these kind of monoliths. Like I don't know if it was last year, the year before. I think Disney was responsible for what, like 80%
Yeah.
of all tickets sold at a box office. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
that's crazy because
Yeah.
it creates an unprecedented amount of influence.
Mm-hmm.
As much as we think of like the golden days of Hollywood, whatever 3 or 4 studios that were doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now we're kind of back around that kind of thing, even though it looks like we've got all this choice. And I think that also, I don't know. There's two ways to look at it. It can be if these said companies are really open about developing their I'll speak to independent
Mm-hmm.
cinema for this because big blockbusters are going to be big blockbusters. They're always going to be controlled by
Yeah.
the big companies. But independent cinema, I think there's an avenue where this goes where these companies are much more excited and ready to accept a lot of different independent companies in terms of what they're producing, support them, and then give them a platform in terms of distribution.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be harder for independent companies to exist
Mm.
if they're not under the moniker of, say, Marvel or
And
say.
that would suck.
That would really suck because, and that's what we kind of lose when we lose the art house cinemas as well,
Mm-hmm.
the repertoire cinemas where you get a chance. Like, I mean, even Slaxx, it played across Canada, but it played in a collection of some bigger movie houses and some smaller movie houses. And if
Yeah.
those smaller movie houses weren't ready to accept it, then it wouldn't have had an audience at all. And
Wow.
it's really,
Yeah.
it's really sad. It kind of it's a certain death to a certain independent filmmaking.
I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
big supporter of independent films, and I hope that never happens. Now, in regards to your career, what are you currently working on? What's in store for you?
Right now, I've got I think coming up Thursday. There's a show up in Canada called Private Eyes. I have a new episode coming out on. Being in Quebec, I've started working on some French stuff. I don't speak French it's not my native language,
Mm-hmm.
but I've learned it over the years, and some opportunities have come. So we're going to be doing a second season of a show called Portrait Robot coming next year. I've done with the pandemic, it kind of altered everything.
Yeah, everything
Um,
is now audition tapes and stuff.
yeah, and some projects that were supposed to be didn't be, and some others kept going. So I was fortunate in that sense. I'll be on some video games coming up as well, doing some voice work, and
Nice.
yeah, just
Nice.
looking for the next thing.
That's awesome. Brett, it's been an absolute delight talking to you,
Hey,
and
John.
it was a fascinating conversation to get your insights on the movie. which, guys, if you have not watched it yet, Slaxx, Slaxx. It's available on. Let's let everybody know where it's available. It's available for streaming on Shudder,
Mm-hmm.
and it's available for rent or purchase on all the major Vudu,
Yeah, Amazon Prime.
Amazon, everywhere.
Yeah,
Guys,
Apple.
check out Slaxx. It's funny. It hits on a lot of very real social issues that are relevant today. The satire is just hysterical. The acting is brilliant. The story is brilliant. And just watch it. You will. It'll be the funnest 80 minutes you've had in a while.
Yeah.
Brett, thank you so much for coming on our show. Any final thoughts you want to share?
No, just what you say. If you can find it, go check out Slacks. It's a real gem for me. It was a real gem of an opportunity, and I love the film. So I'm just excited for more people to see it. And thank you guys, Dead Talk Live, and you, John, for
Absolutely,
inviting
bro.
me and
It's
having
our
this great
pleasure.
conversation.
It's our pleasure. And remember what I said in the beginning. Slacks is still just just over a year old.
Hmm.
I guarantee you, this movie, to compare it to another horror, let's say Shaun of the Dead, uh,
Yeah.
you see how big the following for Shaun of the Dead has happened
Hmm.
over the years. I
Hmm.
always tell people that a movie does not cement itself on opening weekend.
No.
Time, history is the judge of where a movie's going to end up with. You mentioned The Thing earlier. The
Yeah.
Thing, when it came out, it got shredded to pieces by critics.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
hated
Yeah.
it. They hated it. And fans were not too happy with it. Now look where it stands.
Exactly.
Exactly. So I think
Cult
Slacks is,
classics.
yeah, Slacks is gonna. I think it's gonna keep creating a big. It's gonna get a nice cult following. So,
Well, I hope so.
Brett, thank you so much. I want to thank all of our audience who's tuned in tonight. We'll be back again tomorrow. On behalf of Brett Donahue and myself, stay safe and stay walking. Good night.